Hi, friends. Welcome to Sibyl's Lab of Cartomantics. I'm Amelia,
I'm Danielle.
and today we're going to be talking all about tarot practice, like the concept. What is it? Why is it? Danielle, why don't you give us some more information about that?
We are going to do what we normally do when we have an amorphous, sort of unfixed question like this, which is do our Sibyl's Gab list of 5 questions, where we try to come up with our best approximation of an answer, share some examples along the way, try to be as specific as we can, and have fun, enjoy your company, enjoy each other's company as we try to provide some helpful information. So we have our first of 5 questions, and I'll read that off. Actually, okay, so define tarot practice. Be specific about what it looks like in its broadest sense, and what is it not?
Okay. So I took notes on this because we set these questions out a few days ago so that we could have some time to think about it. And I thought about it and I actually took notes. So I defined, after all of my thinking and my pontificating, I define a tarot practice as a practical application of collected information and inspiration that we pick up through life study and reflection of the cards. The main kind of big, like if I could put it in neon letters, I would, is that a tarot practice is active. It is doing with the cards. So, and the way I came to that is by saying, like, it's not reading a book. It's not watching videos. It's not like any other form of like consuming information about tarot. It is an application, an active application of the things that we learn and pick up. I will also say that like my professional work is not tarot practice. Like practice is where I explore and kind of discover the limits of tarot so that I can then bring that into my professional work in a like more intentional and specific way. So like that is not like when I read for others, that is not that's not practice. I've already done the practice and bringing that with me to the table. I think that kind of covers it. I don't know. What are your thoughts?
Question, just to clarify about your thoughts, does this mean for your conception and practice that you have to have cards in hand? Because that's what I'm hearing when I hear you say active, like that's what it means to actually be doing something with the cards actively.
Yes.
Okay. That's pretty like the word practice is a verb. I get the spirit of that. I too took notes on this and all of them. And lately I've been finding it helpful to define my terms. So I looked up the definition of spiritual practice and then just practice. Because I wanted to know like what it is, why use that phrasing when we could just say like doing things with tarot like study, tarot reading, whatever. So a spiritual practice is according to the dictionary that comes with my MacBook, to be specific, is the performance of actions undertaken for the purpose of inducing spiritual experiences and cultivating spiritual development. Like this is fascinating to me because there is a sort of tension I've found the more I sort of lean into the tarot community, which I've done for several years, right? But there are lots of us who arrive here with religious wounding and deep resistance to organized religion because we've had bad experiences with it or we've never found our homes there, whatever. So there's not that kind of, there's like an affinity for something called practice of some kind, but not finding it there. And really embracing tarot as part of what can fill that space, but struggling with calling it spiritual, but still kind of doing something spiritual with it. Like it's a fascinating tension. So in my mind, I think part of this comes up with using the word practice at all, because it's a really intentional kind of, it is a ritual active doing that is deeply connected to some kind of belief, whatever that may be. Instead of just saying tarot reading or tarot study, because I don't think we're talking about like practicing reading, right? Like tarot practice reading. I don't think that's what most people mean when I hear them talk about my tarot practice. Like they're not saying my tarot practice readings or my tarot practice study. Like it seems like a tricky thing to answer because I hear people use it in a different way than that. So that was like, those were the ideas that were floating around in my mind. I don't struggle with the idea of organized religion in the way that I notice a lot of folks do. So I'm not coming at it with the same religious wounding that I think a lot of people understandably are. So I don't need it to function as a certain kind of spiritual practice in that way. But I do think that my embrace of religious ritual in some way ritualizes my engagement with the cards. So I think that tarot practice can be a few things, sort of engaging with tarot as a tool for doing things. That's what I would say. Like, and I think the tarot tool can do a few different things. That tool can self-illuminate. That tool can support meditation. It can do divination, good old-fashioned storytelling. And it can be study. Like I don't in my mind, I don't think, and I don't know that you are saying that. Like I think that you can do stuff with tarot as a conceptual thing that may involve not having the cards in your hand, but is still involved in tarot practice in the way that I understand people to be using that phrase. Do you know what I mean?
I think so. So to you, what is not tarot practice?
I will say that I've never heard someone refer to what they understand to be tarot practice in a way that makes me feel skeptical. Do you know, like, so in my mind, tarot practice is engaging deeply with the cards, whether it's highly practical, like I don't believe any of this spiritual woo-woo, whatever, but like I have ritualized or embedded or routinized my engagement with tarot because I find good space in it, or I love the spiritual woo-woo, all of it, or some combination of the two things. Like I am happy to accept everything under the umbrella of that. And I often come at things with like a kind of resistance to sloppy language. Like, so it is surprising to me that I don't know that I've ever heard someone refer to their tarot practice and been like, I don't know that that's a tarot practice. Like, I don't know if I believe that.
Well, and I think we should also probably like enter the caveat here that like this is kind of our perception and this is mostly reflective of our own relationship with tarot practice and what it means for us. And we're not necessarily saying like if you do or don't do this, then you're not really practicing.
You're not making truth claims for all of tarot for all time.
No, I mean, gosh. Well, and like here's the thing: is Danielle challenged me. I'm not allowed to make any Zen answers, which means I'm not allowed to say yes to everything.
Everything and nothing. Tarot practice is everything and nothing.
It's everything and nothing. So and I feel like your answer was a little Zen, so I want to like poke holes at it. But I also, here, I'll say this as the clarification when I say like it's not reading a book, that's not me saying that like studying tarot isn't part of a tarot practice. What I mean when I say like reading a book, watching YouTube, all that, like, is that sort of like mindless consumption that I mean, I'm guilty of this, like, especially I'm thinking about my art practice where like, I will watch a bunch of videos on YouTube about different like watercolor techniques, but I never actually put a brush on the paper. Or I will read a bunch of books about tarot, but I never pull my cards out and explore and experiment with what I'm reading. And I think that, to me, that is not practice of tarot. That is not practicalizing what you're learning. That's just consuming information.
I do want to say too, aside from the fact that, like, as brilliant as we think we are, we're not making truth claims for all tarot for all time. I do think there can kind of be, especially because for a lot of people, the word practice implies spiritual practice or implies a kind of elevated register of engagement with something, like my practice, my like whatever, my spiritual whatever. There is no inherent virtue in having a tarot practice if that's not what you want, right? So if we're saying like hanging out and just watching our videos while you like do your nails, I've never done that, right? Like, I only mindfully watch
Yeah, whatever.
I never do anything sloppily, but like, or just skimming a tarot book. I am violently guilty of this. I don't know that I ever read the books front to back, but like sort of not being intentional with my consumption of stuff around tarot or any other kind of interest that I have that could be called a practice. If I don't have a practice, or if you don't, there is no like, that's no discredit, right? Like there's nothing inherently better about being able to label what you do a practice. But if you do conceptualize your engagement with tarot as something that might be a practice, that can be useful, right? Like if you seek to build a practice, and that's what it seems like is the reason that we're talking about this, because for some of us, conceptualizing like our actions with tarot, it is helpful to imagine and frame them as practice. That is the supportive like framework. Does that make sense?
Well, yeah, and I think when you first get into tarot, you hear a lot of people talk about like my tarot practice. And like it's like, what does that even mean? Like I don't even know what that means. And we're going to get to this later, but we'll talk about like what our earliest tarot practices looked like. I didn't even think to myself, I am doing a tarot practice right now. It was just like I have these cards, I'm going to do stuff with them. And
I was like, I don't like this deck. Selena Tarot, I don't like this deck. And I'm watching videos on YouTube talking about practice. And I was like, am I supposed to be feeling a thing I don't feel?
See, and when we had different trajectories, because we had very different like early experiences and stuff like that. But like, I just remember when I first started like coming around to like the eclectic forum and like discovering that there were people on YouTube talking about tarot. This was like years into me reading with cards, practicing with cards. Like I was like, what are you talking about? Like, I don't know what any of this means. And it felt really like high concept, right?
Yes.
This idea of like a tarot practice. And I think like for me, and this is like a differentiation that I have to make for myself, because I have to check myself sometimes and go like, okay, have I actually done anything with cards in days? Or have I just mindlessly like scrolled through Instagram and bought new decks? Have I like am I actually doing something mindful with my cards? Am I actually practicing with my cards? Because that is something that is important to me, is that I maintain a practice, especially as a professional reader. Like it's important to me that I maintain a practice that is very personal so that I can be a better reader. And I think for me, I have to define that like active engagement with the cards, whether it just be mindfully meditating on a card image, like that is tarot practice for me, is like putting the cards in my hands and doing something with them. Because if I don't define that for myself, then I could just say anything is a practice, So buying a new deck is a practice. that like, whatever. And yeah, I mean, I just remember first hearing those words tarot practice, and I was like, what do you mean? I don't get it.
I think I rolled my eyes because it felt like the phrasing of it, and this was like probably some defensiveness on my part for not knowing, like feeling like there was an inside language and I didn't know it. So my reaction is to like, oh, these people. But I was like, is there like like, is this a gatekeeping thing? Like, if you know, you know, and if you don't know, then you just have like feelings about a deck you do or don't like. So yes, I'm glad that we're being really transparent about like a high concept sounding phrase and like how it actually works, because I think that part of what we're trying to do with Sibyl's Lab is the word democratize can be obnoxious a little bit, but like you and I have talked about our belief in a kind of grassroots engagement with tarot. And part of that is being clear about our language and making it clear how not high concept some of this is. It's doing stuff with cards, and some of that might be like spiritual, and some of it might be doing a reading about your grocery list. Some of it might be intentional reading or like meaningful structured thought, whether or not you have the cards in front of you. Yeah. So I think that's part of like why we thought this conversation was valuable.
Yeah, well, and like I just did a few weeks ago did a video on like tarot during like in burnout, and
Mhm.
that is like, I mean, the practices that I outlined in that video are very pared back. Some of it really is just gazing at card images without any sort of like journey work. Like it's literally just like, look at this pretty picture. um how does it make you feel, like that sort of stuff. And like to me that is tarot practice, and that is how simple it can be. It can be super simple, or it can be really really complicated and involved. Like, yeah, for me it's just cards in hand, like that's the important thing.
You know, it appeals to the part of me. I've talked about like my Catholic practice. I haven't talked much about it, but I've mentioned that I'm Catholic. There are many approaches to Catholicism. There's a kind of like high Catholicism, like high church vibe, like the cathedrals and the some people wearing veils and all of that. And then there's kind of a folk practice. There are people who say the rosary as a kind of like a meditative experience while they do stuff, like folding laundry and saying the rosary, or driving and saying the rosary. And some people who insist that you need to sit and meditate on like the mysteries for each of the decades of the rosary. Um, like I'm going to always lean towards a kind of more grassroots folk practice, but that is practice, right? Like, so we can sort of wrap this up, but I will say something I found useful. I shared with you, we were talking about how I got the Infinite Door Tarot by Pamela Love, fairly new deck, mass market. And in that guidebook, in the introduction, she lists the 4 ways that she understands the potential uses of tarot, which kind of are connected to what I said before and what we've both talked about. But I loved the clarity of this. So she said, illumination, my summary, reflective insights brought to the surface. And I think what she means is like introspective journaling and doing readings that are kind of contemplative. Navigation, so strategizing, kind of plotting, making a plan. Meditation, like undirected or guided journeying stuff, or path working, right? All fitting in with meditation. And then there's just a good old school fortune telling, divination in like the classic sense. I just loved that. Like illumination, navigation, meditation, divination. I love a list. I love alliteration. I just loved like, yeah, that about encompasses it. And you random person might only do one of those, or like divination with a little hint of meditate, whatever. I love that. And it just, the word practice is roomy, and the concept of practice is roomy. And I do hope that what comes through in part is that I think a lot of us on YouTube who talk about tarot practice or who write about it conceive it as like falling more in under one of those umbrellas than the others, right? I hear divination, for example, talked about less as a meaningful part of serious tarot practice. Nuh-uh. Like, if all you do is divination, like that can be a practice, right? Like, or maybe you just don't want to practice and you just want to read cards sometimes. That's cool too. So I think it's worth talking about the expansiveness or like broadness of what practice might be. It's a lot of babbling.
So hard not to have the Zen answer. It's everything.
We did it. We talked for a long time, but we got there. What's our second question?
All right, second question is, does a practice happen organically, or quote, should it be built with intention? And if the latter, so if it should be built with intention, how?
Amelia, what is your answer to this question?
So this is my most Zen answer. It's a little bit of yes, a little bit of no. So I think, and this is very personal, I think for me, structure is helpful with kind of keeping momentum, right? So I have a tendency to get distracted very easily. I fall off on things. And so if I have some sort of like guided structure, that really helps me. So that like building with intention, that's there, and it helps me to like stay focused and to like not get distracted. But it's basically the same thing. But for me, that structure does its best work when it's guided organically by like what I'm interested and curious about. So it's kind of like being open to the muse. Like I may say, all right, this fall, this is the shape I want my practice to take, and here's some intentions that I'm going to put behind that. But if, for example, like this fall, we did that whole long video about fall intentions and fall practice, and like 2 weeks ago, my brain was like, give me rainbow, let's do some color work. And like, that's, if I were to ignore that like organic inspiration that came up, the other stuff would start to get really boring and feel really constricting for me. So like where the curiosity lies, like follow that white rabbit. And if you need to like put up some guideposts along the way so that you don't fall off altogether with everything, cool. That's how I've like kind of balanced the two. But what about you?
I think a lot of us start into tarot because we're like enamored with a deck and intrigued by what the cards might or might not do and how good we are at it, right? Like how like, oh, it feels like a thing that we can do. And if you get into tarot organically, which is how you're going to get into it, nobody is like holding you hostage to do tarot. We come to tarot because in some way we're interested in it. And so, you know, like it sticks its tentacles out and pulls us in more and more. Then it's going to be occupying more and more real estate in your brain, right? And like, if you follow the rabbit, like eventually you're going to be doing stuff with cards that naturally turns into some version of tarot practice, probably, right? If you maintain enough of an interest. So I think it can happen organically in that you never imagine the concept of tarot practice, but it takes up room in your life in ways that are interesting to you and work for you. And that's great, right? That's certainly enough. Like especially for people who resist structure of any kind, like go bananas. Just use the cards. It feels good, right? Like just follow your bliss. There's nobody like, there's no PhD in tarot, not yet. Like everybody's good. But I will say that I think that tarot practice built with intention can serve you more effectively. Not because you develop a practice with clear boundaries and you stay in them, but like you cannot adjust intentions that you haven't defined. So you noticed like the rainbows are coming. And you said my practice as I had imagined it for this season, we changed directions a little bit. We re-steered the ship. Great. Like that's what we should be doing. It's tarot, for God's sake. This is not like we're not curing anything yet. Like we should not, I don't think that anyone should handcuff themselves to like one way of doing tarot. We're kind of like counterculture in that way. All of us, no matter where we fall, tend to be a little bit of rule breakers. So, you know, I think that an intention-based practice that is not elastic or flexible is no helpful practice at all. But I do think that sitting and reflecting about what needs you have that could be met by what tarot can do just serves you better. So like, sure, it'll develop organically if you stay in the orbit of tarot, and that's fine. If there are parts of your life where needs aren't being met or could be by the stuff tarot can do, I think it's a good idea to find ways to like fit those together. So for example, if you used to have a meditation practice or you want to develop one, I am a person, for example, I've done multiple meditation courses. I like envy people who can meditate. It's a aspirational practice to me. It's like people who run in the morning, who I kind of hate because they're so disciplined. You know, my brain does not have the capacity for the stillness of like empty-minded whatever. I need chanting or something focused. Tarot based meditation or journeying meets that need for me. So at different moments and to different degrees, that has been a part of my tarot practice because it serves me in that way. And I wouldn't have tried that if I hadn't thought carefully about like, that's something that I kind of wish I could do. And oh, tarot might help me do that. Or daily journaling. A lot of us like wish we were journalers and benefit from the anchor of tarot. So it's like in some ways, not in some ways, tarot is a tool. Like I don't write daily in my journal because I need to write about tarot every day. It's because I like writing in my journal every day and tarot makes that easier, right? So like that's intention-based practice.
Well, and one thing I'll say about being intentional with practice, like as someone who is very much allergic to structure, even if it's self-imposed, like as soon as I say this is what I have to do, it's like I run for the hills. The sickness. But it can help with the overwhelm too. Like there is so much to be explored and discovered when it comes to tarot, and you can't do it all, and you certainly can't do it all at the same time. And so picking something and running with that in an intentional way, and like the intentional way could be something as simple as I want to learn astrological associations with tarot, like that. And like you don't have to build every Tuesday and Thursday I will sit down and we will, like, it doesn't have to be anything beyond this is the thing that I want to do and this is what I want to focus on right now. And that's like a study, right? Which tarot practice and tarot study are like, there's a lot of overlap there. But where was I going with this? Oh, right. Like setting an intention can help with the overwhelm. And sometimes you get into that intention and you go, this is not what I'm feeling right now, or something else sounds more exciting. And like, that's okay. But you got to have like somewhere to pivot from. And like, I remember, maybe this is a good time to jump into the next question. So the next question is like, what did your earliest tarot practice look like specifically? And we're going to share like a deck that was formative to that practice. Actually, are we okay to jump to the next one?
Sure, I have something that I can add as we transition, but yeah, go for it.
Because I just remember when I first started sitting down with tarot, and of course, like, again, I had no notion, like, what is a tarot practice? Like, that wasn't even a thing, a phrase that crossed my path at this point. But I floundered with tarot for years because it felt like there was so much, and I didn't have anything to anchor onto to focus on reading tarot with. I had no guidance. I didn't own a tarot book. I didn't even buy a tarot book. I mean, I had to have been like 5 or 6 years into reading before I even bought a tarot book. I had decks, and I had like the guidebook, like the little white books that came with them. And even then, like for the first 5 years of reading, I think I had like 3 decks total, one of which didn't even come with a book. So like I didn't know that tarot forums existed. And for much of this time, I was in my early 20s and I was too poor for internet. So like I didn't even have access to the internet to Google it. Google existed. I'm not that old, but like I didn't have internet in my apartment.
Not having internet in my apartment in my 20s.
Yeah, and so like I had to go to like a coffee shop or the library to get internet, and usually it was for work purposes. I didn't go to like browse for fun. So yeah, I had nothing, and like I floundered. I would kind of look at cards and go, I don't know what I'm looking at here. And like for reference, my very first deck that I practiced with, that I learned with, was the Hermetic Tarot. This is an incomplete deck. I've told this story before. I lost the star card. That's why I ended up buying my second deck, which is the Paulina Tarot. I have no idea to this day. I mean, actually, that's a lie. To this day, I do know what's going on in these cards a little bit more now. But like back then, I had no idea what was going on in these cards. And like I didn't even have guidance so much as like a daily card. No, there was no one there telling me pull a card a day. I had nothing. So my tarot practice looked like flipping through this deck, trying to ask myself what was going on in these cards and what these symbols meant. I had the little white book, which
that's like a nice encyclopedia of a little white book.
Well, and here's an interesting thing though, is that like while I did have this little white book, I had gleaned enough tarot stuff out there that somewhere along the line I picked up that little white books are trash, don't use them. So it was like a year before I cracked this to even look at like a card meaning. Now I did use in the back, there was a Celtic cross, a version of the Celtic cross. And I did know that people did 3 card readings of body, mind, body, spirit, and past, present, future. Those were the things that I knew. So I did Celtic crosses from the back of the little white book and 3 card mind, body, spirit, and past, present, future readings. Trying to figure out how to read these cards. And it was like whenever I sat down to like work with tarot, it was like very ritualistic. I would light a candle, I would dim the lights, I had this specific music that I would play. It was a very serious moment for me whenever and mind you, I was like 19 whenever I sat down with these cards. It was a very serious moment. I mean, if you look at these cards, you feel like you kind of have to be serious.
Oh yeah. Make a ritual.
Yeah. And so I felt like I needed to make it a ritual. And so I did. And that was like 3 years of this before I lost the card. And that's what I did. I did Celtic crosses and 3 card readings. And then I would also like, I've always been a person who just kind of from the beginning would like flip through decks and just look at things. And that was it. That was like it. And I would journal it. I would write it down. That's it. That's all I did. And I flopped around like a fish. Like I did not.
Did that practice serve you?
You know, here's an interesting thing. When I lost that card, I was like, okay, well, there goes tarot. That's done. And it was a couple of weeks before I realized that I really missed it. I
Oh,
really missed pulling out cards and looking at them and journaling my mind, body, spirit spreads, and I missed it. And I felt a vacancy. And so that's what prompted me to want to replace it.
that's so interesting. Like in a good way.
Like if I look back to what I was doing then, and even in the moment, I was like, this is so frustrating and I have no idea what I'm doing. And it didn't feel like it was doing anything, or like I was doing anything. But then the moment it was gone, I felt that absence.
That's important data. That's interesting. There's something kind of serendipitous about having lost that card and learned about its value in your life because of that experience. It's also fascinating because you said you paused because you lost the star card.
Mm-hmm.
I've known people who keep using a deck even if they lost a card. Blows my mind. Like, not because there's something quote wrong with it, but like I would cognitively be able to engage with a deck that I knew. It's like a book that I know like a page is missing. I would feel like anxiety. It would give me anxiety. So, but I know some people would be like, oh, I guess I have a 77 card deck now.
I think I had some sense that like having all of the cards was important.
I mean, and that is not necessarily a thing that everyone would feel. That almost represents a kind of reverence of the architecture of tarot. Like it felt important to you that all of the pillars be there, like all of the pages be in the book. Yeah, I mean, so the only thing I was going to say to that last question is that I think goes into this one is that it can be easy to conceptualize a practice, to build practice, being informed by the practices you learn about from like the people in our community, however you encounter them, social media, YouTube, like books that you read by authors that you like, and actually handcuff yourself to that. So when it becomes impractical, when you have overestimated the amount of time in your life or your affinity for structure, like, please don't be the person who turns it into a high-minded prison. I say this with experience. I don't know if you've ever felt like you've done this, Amelia, but it's like I take tarot seriously and I enjoy it as a serious thing that I do. So I've conceived of the right way to do it. And when that no longer serves me, I'm still going to do it come hell or high water, even if it makes me sort of stop enjoying the practice because I know it's good for me. Like it's so easy to do that. It takes work if you develop a practice to adjust it as you go with the seasons, with your time that you have available for it, whatever. So that is something to think about with intention, that your intentions are going to shift.
Well, and can't say always, but it definitely within the last like 5 to 8 years, I have waxed poetic about the magic of tarot's ability to shrink and expand to fit within our lives. It just takes a little bit of like creative zhuzhing to figure that out, of like how it can fit into the space that you have. Even like something as small as like being in the car right before you have to walk into work can be a space for tarot practice. It just takes a little bit of creative finagling.
When I started learning tarot, something I would do to engage with it is when I was trying to go to sleep. I would try to remember. So the deck I'm sharing that was a big part of my early practice is my trimmed edition of the Llewellyn Tarot. A lot of people have this deck. It's mass market, and a lot of people trim this deck. So this is not, this is not a novel thing that I thought to do, but I would try to remember the archetypes. So I would think to myself, like, recall everything I can, try to picture the 5 of Cups as a way of like feeling confident and fluent in the archetypes. It made me feel like I knew the deck intimately. I got into tarot at first when I was still in graduate school. And so I had the kind of space in my life that you have when you're trying to like make it through graduate school. And a lot of that was readings about like high stakes, things that felt very high stakes, and practical things. And also, I know I should be writing my dissertation, but I don't want to. So I'm going to play Candy Crush and shuffle cards, watch Netflix. There was a lot of that. There was a lot of like feeling guilty about not writing my dissertation and either playing Candy Crush. I will never forgive my mother-in-law for teaching me that. She showed me that game and it took up so much time. Shuffling cards. She actually also bought me my first tarot deck. But I very much thank her for that. And watching Netflix, watching way too much Netflix. So it became, as a result of that, a real self-soothing tool. And just looking at pictures that I thought were pretty, as a way of getting out of my own hyper analytic head. But I did like really simple. The graduate student in me was doing a lot of like really learning tarot stuff for my practice. So I've said before, I trimmed off these titles. So I had to memorize what the minors looked like, because the majors in Llewellyn Tarot are different. They're based on legend, but the minors are Rider-Waite-Smith minors in watercolor effectively. And laid out 3 cards at a time to tell stories. My biggest, most routine practice that kind of stuck around like through all of the early incarnations of my high-minded, serious doing tarot, and then my I have no room in my life if I want to ever finish this thing that I'm working on, was doing, and I don't do this anymore, a 3-card spread every day. How did I envision it? Like this, the student of story that I was, I had adventure, action, and aid, I think is like what I called it or something. So like, what does the day look like? What's the theme of the day? What do I need to do for this day? One action, and then like, what can I appeal to help me? It's also notable that I like converted during college, like graduate school. Graduate school is a very formative, like, spiritually stressful, high pressure moment when all of the 10 wands are coming down on you. Like, you reach for things that like tools, whatever they are, and rituals and whatever. And I would always write at least a few things down about that, like 4 sentences to maybe 4 pages, depending on how much time I had and how much I wanted to avoid other things. Yeah, that was like a great self-soothing tool, and much lower stakes than needing to do 9 months of classes to convert to Catholicism. Like, I really loved my priest. Like, there was no police. There was no priest of tarot who was like watching to make sure I was doing it the right way.
What was it that inspired you to keep going beyond the need that tarot filled at that time?
Oh, like after that kind of urgency, like, why stick with it? Because I realized I was good at it and I liked doing something that I was good at. I think a lot of us stick with it for that reason, because there's lots of stuff. For example, I also tried learning to knit. I'm not good at knitting. It's humiliating. Like, if I had been good at knitting, I would probably be making blankets as we speak. I'm not good at it. But also, I mean, here's the thing. I really liked being a professor of literature and film. I like literature and film a lot, and I engage with tarot as a storytelling tool. And I also like spiritual practice and ritual, which is why I converted. And I find tarot to be a good tool for that. And in a lot of ways, tarot is not, it's not about like tarot itself. It is what the architecture around it can do and how it functions as a tool. So it's not, you know what I mean? Like I loved, part of what I did was doing Jewish studies stuff, and I learned Kabbalistic, like the tree of life, and a lot of that, the, you know, Golden Dawn version of Kabbalah through my engagement with esoteric tarot. So it was really helpful in that way. And in that way, it's not really about tarot, is it? It's about using tarot to understand like a certain spiritual version of the world. And I think that's kind of beautiful. Like I have raved about metaphor. I love a metaphor. I engage with tarot as a tool for engaging with myth. You know what I think it is? I think it's that like tarot is so capacious. It can do so many things. So if I get bored of its use for my 3-card spread a day, there are so many other things I can do. There was a point at which I really liked some of the ritual prayers with the church, but was like, you know, Father Mike, like there's not enough here for me. Like I need more structure. I need more meat. So the Ignatian, if you know, like St. Ignatius, Loyola, the Ignatian examen prayer, like there's a kind of 3-pronged prayer that you can do at the end of the day. It's basically like the judgment card. Like, how'd I do today? Which is kind of like, how did I mess today up? And good stuff. And like, what can I excavate from what my actions today, and how can I position the me that does stuff tomorrow, right? Whether or not we're religious people, like, good questions. These are good things to engage with. Like, what kind of person am I? How did I behave, and how am I going to behave in the future? And tarot's great for that. Like, if I am tired and lazy, but I still want to engage with that, the cards will force me to give some answer, because I might pull the Knight of Swords and be like, no, that's not true. Actually, this is true. I don't know. You know, one year, I'll finish after this, but one year I decided I wanted to, for Lent, donate, I think like $2, $2 to $5 a day. Like I put aside money for Lent to different nonprofits like that I found. In retrospect, there's something obnoxious about that, because once you sign up for a nonprofit, often they mail you things. And over time, that mailing cost is much higher. But like Danielle wasn't thinking that. I was thinking of my spiritual good works, right? Whatever. But I was like, I don't know like how to choose. And I was using tarot cards all the time to be like, I think I should look for a political, like, you know, supporting, you know, food shortage, or I think I should look for, you know, a library something. I ended up donating money, and I continued to donate to a prison library, like a book service at a women's prison for reading and making books available. And like some combination of tarot cards led me to search and donate. I mean, it's a weird use of the cards. I needed a tool, and I was like, well, I have these 78 cards. Let's see what they can do. And that's pretty cool.
That is interesting. I mean, it took me a really long time to figure out that I could do anything with tarot with intention. It took me a long time, like probably like 6 or 7 years. It took me a while.
That wasn't like, it wasn't one of the earlier Lents. This is a later Lent. This was like years in Lent.
Okay, so now that we've looked at our earliest tarot practice, what is the general shape of our current practice and a deck that is central to that practice? For me, the general shape of my current practice is like, ugh, this is like, I have to give a Zen answer to this, which is like everything. But like, I will say the heart of my current practice is experimentation, and like kind of a playful nod to tarot.
You've been
Yeah.
doing a lot of play lately. Art and play and poetry and
Yeah, it's like it's for my personal practice, right? Like, because again, I have my like I'm a reader
Mhm.
stuff, but like that to me is not practice. The practice is the stuff that's just for me, and for me, it's a lot of play, and decks that I will always come back to for play are going to be my Tarot de Marseille, my good old. This is the Gasman, or Gasmon. Um, by Yves Renaud. I love this deck. It's so colorful, but really I will reach for any Marseille deck. And that is a site of play and joy for me, because I love how limitless it feels. Like, it doesn't feel like it's constrained by correspondences or even like a modern lens that has been placed upon it. I find Rider-Waite-Smith really frustrating sometimes, because it has not only like that Golden Dawn history that's so attached to it, but it's also got all of this like modern stuff that has been added on to the Golden Dawn that I'm just like, it's so hard to break around that. And Tarot de Marseille just doesn't really have that for me.
is that why? So you like the history, not just the pips, but like the stripped down history of those pips.
Yeah, I would say it's stripped down history, but it's also like, we just don't have a lot on people placing things onto the Tarot de Marseille. It's, and so I think there's just, there are less what feel like rules
Sure.
around reading with TDM.
Less agendas.
Yeah, yeah. And like, I know there are certain traditions out there with historic tarot that are very whatever. I don't subscribe to any of that, so like, I'm cool. It's great for those people. And my introduction to TDM was a playful one. I was introduced to TDM through Enrique Enriquez's work. And so that is the spirit that I carry with me into all of my work with TDM. And like, this is just, I will always, right now I've got on my desk like a whole bunch of Rider-Waite-Smith adjacent and inspired decks. And I've got some Thoth inspired decks, but like, I will always have a TDM, and it's like, it feels like home, and it feels like where I can go to really do my can really stretch and grow and learn and play and explore and all that good stuff. So yeah, that's my current practice, is like, I don't know. It's like asking the question like, okay, where's the boundary? Where's the limit with tarot? And I keep finding the more and more that I do that there isn't really a limit to what it can do. We just have to be open to it.
Yeah.
I think that's like, I don't know, probably not a specific answer, but it's my answer.
No, I think it is a tool. We call ourselves a lab. It's a tool for experimentation. And maybe it can't do something, but why not like sort of test it and see what it can do, stretch it a little bit.
Yeah.
My current practice primarily is it's two-pronged. So I talked in a solo video a few weeks ago about how for some reason I've decided lately that I am doing a daily pull, not like my card of the day so much as like, what card am I gonna think about for this journaling session? And every month I've had that daily pull deck or two decks. And this month I'm working with Lydia Tarot, like Madam Lydia Wilhelmina's something something. She's coming up with a new edition that's going to be on Kickstarter. So if you don't have this deck and you like it, It will be available. Another edition will be available soon, but also the Somnia Tarot. And a new edition of that is just out, but this is the first edition I've been working with. So I'm doing the same card from those two decks every day, whatever the card happens to be. Today it was the Sun, and I'm writing a poem, like a 1-page poem max, that is in some way inspired by those cards. The different quality of what I come up with is so like, it's been really fun and liberating to let myself write trash poetry every day. Like, and I sort of am doing two things, right? So I know what the Sun looks like in my mind on the basis of all the decks I've worked with. And to that, I'm bringing decks that I haven't as regularly worked with, and looking at whatever card is that card of the day. So the Sun, and seeing what like gifts do you have to give to the Sun that lives in Danielle's mind. So those are why I'm pulling like 1 to 2 decks as my daily draws that aren't like my home decks or decks that I work with as regularly. So, and those are two very different decks that do interesting things when they're next to each other. Those are different suns. So the Sun Insomnia Tarot is a robed red figure on a white horse. Right, I think we see that it's a white horse. It might just be also a robed horse standing on a pedestal, and the sun is in the far background. And Lydia Tarot is 3 ghastly, ghostly little children like, that are reanimated from death, and there's like a sun in the background making everything look more eerie. I mean, the nonsensical poetry that I was inspired to write is just so delightful and freeing. It's good to exercise my creative muscles and just to see like what different versions of the Sun are up to. So that's been my daily practice. And the other main half of my practice is myth-based work. So at any given time, I tend to be working with some goddess or some mythic figure or folk figure of some kind, and have a tarot deck and an oracle deck that I'm using to work with that figure. And I like hit all the sweet spots. So I love to do research, like the actual, like, ooh, what does the archive say about this figure? Like, so the actual original text, but in translation, because I don't speak, most of these languages. I'm working with Medusa right now, and I've worked with her before, but I love her myth, and I do not speak or read Greek. So I'm looking at those in translation. But yeah, I use the decks to explore themes connected to her myth, to journal about them, to do spreads that align where I am and where she was and what I might learn from that story. So for the tarot deck that I'm using for that is actually Tarot of Persephone's Garden, the Chthonian edition. This is still in print, and it's from Chthonic Forest on Etsy. We'll have the link in the video description along with like the information about the other decks we're showing. But this is chthonic references, the underworld and the dark place. And Persephone's Garden, this just uses Pre-Raphaelite and other early European masterworks to craft a world that feels very absorbing to me and is perfect for kind of going to the dark places and thinking about like women's stories in this beautiful atmospheric place that can be really violent and dark. Because if you know the myth of Medusa, she's not just a monster that Perseus was sent to kill. She's got a pretty painful story about how she became a monster. So it's really it's a great deck for that. And it's delicious cardstock. So it's linen. I love it. Yeah. So those are my 2-pronged practices.
See, you're so focused. And right now I feel like my practice is like, I don't know, how far can I stretch? It's
Yeah, our brains are always like that though. Like I'm like, here is my list and my approaches, and you are like, I feel like you bring an artist's soul to your tarot practice. Like
yeah.
you I am like, I am going to experiment and map out my experiment, and you are like living experimentally with tarot. And both of these things, I think that practice is at its best in some way experimental for a person. Like I think we're kind of like seeing what tarot can do in whatever our practice is. And we are two perfectly different examples of like how experimental tarot can work for two amazing women with very different approaches to
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I'm very much like the candy shop approach. It's like I see something, I try it, I play with it, and I set it aside. And, I mean, like I've been doing a lot of work with color in tarot recently and like really pulling back to like the building blocks of tarot. Like, what if I just look at the lines of these three cards together, what story is that telling? Yeah, just like really trying to both like simplify and expand at the same time with how I'm reading cards. I don't know. But it's like fun. Like I sit down every day and pull out a deck of cards and I go, how can I have fun today? Like that's the question that I ask. So I think
tomorrow. Have fun writing terrible poetry. And collect it. I have a journal, a growing journal, because I also did this last month, of terrible poetry.
I've been asking a lot of like wisdom questions lately because they're like so much fun.
What is a wisdom question, Amelia?
A wisdom question is like a good example of a wisdom question is what is tarot, but also like what is the nature of joy? What is the nature of play? It's a lot of like I ask a lot of questions like what is the nature of something, but even like tell me about grief and like letting the cards.
First heard this term from Rachel Pollack. Did you also hear it in her work? And it was one of her works about Kabbalah and tarot. And she was talking about religious wisdom questions, like religious, spiritual, like, so who is God? Like, what is the afterlife? This kind of stuff. But she's a perfect example. The late, great Rachel Pollack is no longer with us, of like, it didn't occur to me before I read her work, like, oh, you can ask that? You can just ask anything. I didn't think like you can't, but it didn't occur to me as something I might ask. And that is, yeah, you can.
It's like a
what?
marriage of philosophy and tarot.
Yes.
Like very much so. And I think if I had like taken a different path, well, there are many different paths I could have taken, but like if I could have taken a different path, like I probably would have majored or minored in philosophy in college at a certain point. Because I love just thinking. Like, and I think right now in my life, I need space where I can just think my own thoughts and let my mind kind of explore different rooms as it wants to and needs to, because everything else is so like, well, responsibilities. Okay. So wisdom questions, they're fun.
What is our last question? Question number 5.
So to wrap up, we challenged each other to come up with 3 bullet points that define our end goal of a practice. So in other words, like what does our tarot practice achieve? And to do it in 3 succinct bullet points. And this is going to be so individual, but I'm curious to know what you came up with.
Why don't we can take turns if you want. So I'll share one and you can share one. My first one, I wrote these down. And I made a note that like, I think that such and such practice, right? So Catholic practice, meditation practice, tarot practice, as it's conceptualized that way. So not I'm practicing with tarot cards, like practicing reading, but a practice tends to have a kind of shared end goals, set of end goals. So the first one I put is that it provides some kind of clarity about your inner and outer life and how it matches your higher ideals. That is to different degrees, right? So that might mean something that's kind of transcendent and like woo woo. This is how like my, my spiritual aligned like life purpose sheet, whatever, my relationship with God and how it aligns, and tarot does that. Or it might just be an end of the day reading that's like, what mess did I make? How did that not, like, how did that happen? Because that's not who I want to be. Whatever it is, I think that an end goal of practice, as I imagine it, is that it provides some kind of clarity in reconciling our inner and outer worlds to like, yeah.
So my first point is that practice for me is really focused on presence with the cards and ultimately with myself and like this right now. I think, yeah, I think for me, kind of where tarot has landed, at least in its current iteration, is that like what practice is about is going to be some sort of mindfulness. Like I think that's why I love like the open reading and my approach with like Tarot de Marseille is because it's like, don't live up here and think about what you think you should know or like try to dig through the archives of your mind. It's like, what do you see? Start there. And that is such a grounding practice for me, to just have to focus on one thing and to be really, really present with that one thing that's right in front of me, and not forcing or expecting myself to like kind of rattle the filing cabinets up there for some knowledge that I may or may not have gained along the way. Because it all like bubbles up, right? As soon as I start looking at what I see, all of that stuff that I've done for the last 15 years starts to bubble up. But it starts with that presence.
I like that. The next one I have, I think kind of connects to that. So I said serves as some sort of anchor for ritual or routine in a way that satisfies some kind of yearning. Like that doesn't mean, it could mean what you said you used to do with your Hermetic Tarot. So like turning down the lights and lighting candles and doing the incense or whatever. I used to charge my decks on the full moon just because I heard that was a thing you could do. And I was like, that's wild. Like, do they get special moon magic? Probably not, but maybe why not try it out? I mean, what it could, to say like finding some kind of ritual or routine could mean today my reading happens at 3, tomorrow I'm lucky if I sit down, but I have crafted some kind of container for it. I'm thinking of you with this because like ritual and routine for me with like 2 inconvenient dogs and a husband like looks different. I love these dogs, but they are very difficult. Looks different than like if I was caring for a human full time and also had like a dude that I lived with and love. So like I have space enough to like be a little more, and my brain prefers kind of structured in a certain kind of similar time of day every whatever. But I suspect, and you can share whether this is true, that no matter how irregular, like the times that you do things with tarot or how frequently you're able to fit things in a week, would you say that you still have like some boundary setting around it, like some container of some kind? Do you know what I mean?
I know one thing. I know every day I'm going to touch a deck of cards and I'm going to write in my journal. And those two might happen at the same time. They might happen at different times, but those are like my two kind of daily things. Sometimes that happens in the morning, sometimes it happens at night before bed, sometimes they happen, I'll go to the like carpool line and I'll throw a deck in my bag. And while I'm sitting in the carpool line waiting to pick up my son from school, I'll pull the deck out and I'll play with it while I'm sitting in the car. Like, but that's like that is my container. That's my like, every day I'm going to open my journal, I'm going to do some writing, and I'm going to touch a deck of cards.
No, I love that. Like my daily draw trashy poem happens every day with very few exceptions right before I go to sleep. So I do my draw at the end of the night. Because like I like that kind of routine and I have room for it. But that is its own ritual and routine, and what you're talking about is ritual and routine of a different kind. But so in my mind, ritual and routine in some way, like tarot kind of taking up that space, is crucial to practice as I imagine it.
Yeah. My second point is that practice is helps us expand what we know. That would like, and like kind of the flip side of that is that we never know everything, right? So like we're constantly kind of like expanding and folding in on ourselves, and growing, and like it never stops.
I adore that. I wasn't clever enough to have that, but I think that's so right. The moment that you think you know everything about tarot, I think you've missed the point. I love that though. Because that makes it sound so fun. Isn't that great? If you really like learning, it's like there's more. Like this
is it like a physics concept where it like kind of like grows out and comes up on like it's like kind of constantly like feeding.
Professor physics.
I don't know. But I know I've seen like some images of things like they're constantly kind of like feeding into itself, and like it's growing as it's feeding itself. Anyway, that's
my last one. So my third one is, I think, personal. I'm not sure that this is true for everybody, but I don't know that my practice became something I felt confident enough to call a practice until I understood it within the context of some kind of tarot like discourse and community. So a larger conversation about tarot that existed in some meaningful way that I was either passively or actively engaging with. So originally that was just passively. It was like listening to YouTube creators I liked and going on the eclectic forum to look up decks, like, which is and reading those reviews. And Bonnie on an eclectic forum reviews like lots of decks. I know her. Like, you start to see the same names and their voices you trust and are interested in. That is a discourse, and that was like understanding myself, understanding the conversation and the place of myself in that conversation. So forming ideas and finding, what I agreed with or what did or didn't make sense to me. I actually thought that was really important. I don't know. As I was writing this, I was thinking like, this might be highly personal. Some people might develop something called a tarot practice wholly in a vacuum. They like encounter nothing to do with tarot books, tarot websites, tarot social media. Bless you. You exist in a world where you can like desaturate yourself from media. That sounds like a form of bliss that is no to me. But as a person who engages with media and is like, has been educated about other stuff in social ways, I find shared discourse and community really helpful. And that has been key to my practice. I think what I understand about things being possible with practice is wholly been informed by the different voices I've encountered. So
yeah. I love that. I never would have considered that. I mean, because I did spend so much of my first formative years with tarot in a vacuum, and like it was hard. It was so hard. Things really picked up once I discovered forums and blogs and like
you find forums and blogs and you're like, that is trash. I don't agree with any of that. You know the conversation and you can start to situate yourself. And
we're like feeding into each other's. I mean, it's like a very Six of Pentacles situation, right? Like we're like, it's the give and the take. My final point for practice, like as an end goal, is exploration and play. Like just exploring the cards, playing with the cards. yeah, like like seeing what there is to see with them. And I suppose that kind of ties into my second bullet point, but to me they're like two different things, because like expanding on what I know can be like a more serious thing. And this is just like asking the question, like, what if?
I like that.
And then running with it.
Tarot makes me feel less guilty about like binge watching things as long as I'm doing readings about them. So I will binge watch a trash series and then be like, but what's going to happen next? Cards, and do a reading. So I'm practicing my tarot, like stretching my muscles, like seeing how my skills work, and, you know, getting a new deck in action. And it's all for the greater purpose of my spiritual practice.
All right. Finish this out with a reading, Danielle. What are we going to read for?
Let's see the, like, what need can our tarot practice fulfill this week?
Ooh, okay, I'm going to use a TDM. I'm going to pull. Well, the other deck I have right now is
what
incomplete.
Is it?
The Hermetic Tarot. So I'm like,
oh,
this is what I've got. Okay, I think I'm going to pull 2 cards.
Okay.
For what need can our tarot
Mine be in the middle. Can we put my card in the middle of your 2 TDMs?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm using Llewellyn Tarot, the late great. I used to carry this deck from room to room in my house and feel anxious if I didn't have it handy. Do you have 2 face cards there?
I have a major and a court.
Queen of Swords, baby.
All right, I've got the Hanged Man, Le Pendu, and the King of Baton, or of staves, wands, sticks, big sticks.
Yes. Okay. So we have Hanged Man, Queen of Swords, King of...
There's such a strong vertical line in all of these cards.
Yes.
The Queen's sword and the straight back of her throne, and then we've got our traitor hanging here in like a straight line, and we've got our like very erect King of Wands. It almost feels like what that's saying to me is like using tarot to give us like some sort of like guided direction. You know, like I think of like the kind of north, the true north of a compass. Like tarot is going to be the thing that really leads us on that path forward.
Yeah. Like sort of tarot for clarity, tarot for direction, navigation. We have the 4 cards.
And when we feel like we're upside down and things don't quite make sense, you know, like tarot can kind of make that path really clear.
I may have heard a rumor, Amelia, but I think I know that you're going to be teaching some kind of class about using tarot for navigation. Is that correct?
That is correct. That is correct. We are working on some workshops, so be on the lookout for those. Yeah, we'll announce some more details soon. But if you've made it to the end of this very long video, then you get a little sneak peek. Thank you so much.
I was going to say thank you as well. And also in the comments, tell us how we're wrong. Tell us what tarot practice is. We would love to know what you think about it.
Tell us that we are liars. We love to hear it. But yeah, thank you for joining us. You can find all of the information about where to find us in the description box below. And until next time, friends, we will see you in the lab.
Bye.